Welcome to the Directions Mag GeoInspirations podcast series with Joseph Kerski.
All right, greetings, folks. Joseph Kerski here from Esri and from the University of Denver. I'm here with one of my all-time favorite people, Allen Carroll. Allen, greetings. Welcome.
Greetings. Hi, Joseph.
Thanks for doing this, Allen. The Directions Magazine GeoInspirations column has been going on for about 3 years now, and we've been just honored to have a whole wide variety of department secretaries and CEOs and graduate students, GIS professionals, and lots of others in on this column. So we're just thrilled to have you here today.
Happy to be here.
Allen, I think that many of the GeoInspirations readers know who you are, but there may be some that don't know who you are. So if you could just outline what your current position is, for starters, that'd be great.
Sure. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have no idea who I am, but I am program manager for storytelling at Esri, which means that I founded the story maps team at Esri, and so we do two main things. We have a development group that creates and maintains the web apps that enable many thousands of people and organizations to tell multimedia stories using maps and the web. And we have an editorial team I spend most of my time on that produces stories on a continuing basis, often in collaboration with other organizations. And we do that for several reasons: to market Esri and story maps, to provide inspiration and ideas for effective storytelling, and to help get organizations, especially nonprofits, up and running with story maps.
Oh, excellent, Allen. I think that you were telling me late last year, this would be late 2018, there were just about 1 million story maps that have been created. Is that true?
Not quite yet, but we are over 750,000 story maps, and those are stories that are hosted on Esri's cloud service, or GIS Online. Now, there are many thousands more within enterprise systems and behind firewalls and stuff, but we can't count those. We don't know how many are out there. So it might be approaching 1 million, but it's at any rate, it's a gratifyingly large number.
Well, that is really amazing. I know you've written about this in some columns in the past, about just this whole phenomenon being way beyond the multimedia aspect of telling your stories through maps. And I'm wondering, do you mind spending a few moments to reflect on just that whole, what it's been like, and how it's changing how organizations are presenting themselves and so on through these story maps?
Sure. Well, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about my past later in the interview, but I've worked for 27 years at National Geographic, and what I did there mainly was help inform people about the world, and that was thrilling. But at Esri, my main role has kind of shifted to enabling people to tell their stories about the world, and that's just incredibly thrilling. There's nothing more gratifying for us and this happens every day, is to encounter a story map that somebody's created that tells an important or really interesting and compelling story. That's just incredibly exciting to see how people are using our apps to tell their stories, often about really important and really fascinating topics.
Indeed, Allen. I'm not on your team, just for the benefit of the listeners here. I'm on the education outreach team, but I am a huge fan of yours and your whole team. I mean, you've got some brilliant people on that team, and we are promoting and conducting workshops and story mapping all the time. And so anyway, thanks.
Just real quick, one of the things that is also thrilling is to see how story maps are really taking off in the education realm, and that we're seeing more and more student-created story maps, which is just really exciting.
Oh gosh, yes, all the way down to middle school, even upper elementary. It's just it is.
Yep.
It is pretty amazing. So, hey, Allen, you mentioned it briefly, but if you could expand on your background here for the benefit of the listeners here, that'd be great.
Sure. It's kind of a checkered one. I majored in environmental studies in college and worked briefly for the state of Connecticut Environmental Protection Department and learned that I was not cut out to be a state bureaucrat. But eventually I found myself freelancing as a writer and editor and illustrator and designer. I found I can write and I can edit, but that's hard work. Illustration design was the fun part, so I ended up doing that. And I freelanced for several years in Washington, D.C. before, and that freelance work eventually landed me a job at National Geographic on the magazine staff, and that began my long 27 years career at Nat Geo. Part of which was on the magazine, and part of which was in the map division. And I thanks to Nat Geo, was able to revive a long-held interest and passion, but for which I'd never done any studying on maps and cartography. And so ultimately, I ended up for the last dozen or so years at National Geographic as Chief Cartographer there. And then through that, or during that time, got to know Esri, know and admire Esri and the amazing community of geographic information systems professionals. And then about 8 years ago, joined Esri to start and direct the Story Maps program.
And when I remember the day, I go back about 11 years or so at Esri. I remember the day that it was announced that you were coming to our organization, and we were just over the top, over the mountain thrilled. Because I think I was at USGS when I first got to know what you were doing over there at National Geographic in the maps cartography as chief cartographer. What was it like, Allen, to go from one big internationally respected organization to another fairly large internationally respected organization? I mean, did you encounter some things that you expected, some things you didn't expect? What was it like?
Well, it was great. I'm just incredibly fortunate to have been able to work for what I consider the two premier kind of geography-based organizations on the whole planet. So at National Geographic, obviously, it was a globally recognized brand. Met and rubbed elbows with and worked with all sorts of really fascinating people, and enjoyed pursuing the mission of the society, which is to raise awareness about the planet and to increase and diffuse geographic knowledge. At Esri, it's a very different organization, but with a similar passion for place and for geography, perhaps even a greater focus on the importance of geography and spatial thinking. Obviously, Esri is a for-profit company. National Geographic was a non-profit company or organization, but Esri is a very special company, and not that there aren't other mission-oriented companies, but the whole mission and ethos of Esri is very, very much focused on creating a better world and enabling people to use the tools of mapping and analysis and geography to improve our quality of life and enhance sustainability, and at least fight for a sustainable and just and healthy future. So it's just been an incredible thrill to be here at Esri and to realize the depth at which that belief is held here at what normally people think of as a money-making for-profit organization.
Yeah, good points, Allen. I frequently, and I know you do too, talk with students and getting them to think about not just what you want to do, but what kind of organization you actually want to work for or could work for, and to think carefully about the organization's mission, goals, ethos, like you said. And for me, coming over from a long history of working with federal agencies, I always valued that whole public service aspect to it. Yeah. And I thought, Joseph, how can you actually work for a private company? But as you're saying, Esri is very keen on and attuned to listening to what people want. And so trying to produce what kind of tools, data sets, et cetera, that people can actually use to be successful in their work and to, like you said, make a better world. So, Allen, you mentioned this a little bit with your past. I've forgotten about the glacial till past of yours at Connecticut, but thinking about, the most important thing maybe that convinced you to enter the fields when you were, designing and writing and so on. It could have been a class or a person, a book, an event, something else that convinced you to, this is what you should be doing for your career.
Well, people have probably already realized my career path was pretty weird and random, and so there wasn't really any single point at which I decided to enter this field, quote unquote. I grew up loving maps. I was the family navigator on
Yep.
family vacations, sort of the classic '60s era station wagon odysseys across the country. I grew up in Indianapolis. And I hand drew maps. I drew a map of the Arboretum around my alma mater, Connecticut College. I did, various other sort of personal projects, but it never kind of penetrated my thick skull that I would actually end up being a cartographer as a sort of career thing. But fortunately, I was able to, through National Geographic and Esri, to kind of rediscover that interest and do a whole lot of learning on the job. And it's been really great. But I think it's an important lesson for students to realize that not every career path is a real kind of straight and logical and rational one. Sometimes opportunities arise and things happen, and things kind of come back around, and you can fulfill dreams that you might not have realized you had or had forgotten about.
Yeah, good point, Alan. I mean, you say yours has been sort of odd and varied, but you have been focused on communication, writing,
Right.
designing, mapping, geography. We'll have to compare some of the hand-drawn maps we drew years ago. I've got a whole collection that I've unearthed on big poster board of made-up places. I even had all the streets named and address ranges. Alan, this is really
Oh
nerdy.
wow, you're even weirder than
Oh
I
my
am.
gosh. No, I think between the two of us here, no, and I think that's a nice thing about, like you mentioned, that there isn't one pathway and you seize opportunities. And yeah, you've read Maphead by Ken Jennings, Alan. That kind of reminded me of your station wagon family navigator statement. He wrote this book about being the family navigator and
Oh
not being.
really? I haven't read that.
Yeah, apparently we had him as a speaker at our National Council for Geographic Education conference one year. He apparently got to be famous for some sort of long-running Jeopardy championship where he was on there for weeks and weeks.
Oh
I
right,
never
right,
knew, but
right.
I
Yeah.
love his book, Maphead. So, Alan, here's another question for you. You've done so many wonderful things. Is there a project or initiative that you're super proud to be a part of?
Well, again, I'm very fortunate. There are several, but one or two come to mind. One that I'm particularly proud of is I art directed and designed a long out of print, unfortunately, a National Geographic book called The Historical Atlas of the United States. And that was my first real stint in the cartographic division at National Geographic. And it was a fantastic opportunity to kind of sum up from a geographic perspective the history of the United States. And it was kind of a tour de force of, a big format book with lots and lots of maps and illustrations and graphics and photographs and text, of course. So that was incredibly exciting. And I guess the second would be just the opportunity to kind of head the efforts to create a couple of editions of the World Atlas along with the wall maps and supplement maps that appear in the magazine. And then finally this stint heading the story maps effort and just seeing how story maps have taken off and how they've been used has been just incredibly exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I worked in the main publication area, the sort of the big publications library / warehouse at the U.S. Geological Survey, and we actually have a historical atlas of the USA, the very one that you're talking about in there, and that is an amazing tour de force for sure. I love historical mapping. I know you do too. We ought to talk. We'll have to talk more after this sometime about that. What do you think is the most important thing that the geography, science, GIS mapping community should think about or work on here as we get into, gosh, we're getting over to the decade of the 2020s here pretty shortly. What do you think we need to be working on in this next decade?
Well, that's a no-brainer to me, and that is that we all need to be working as hard as we possibly can to ensure a future for our kids and grandkids. I literally lose sleep over the fact that with with the human population of the world continuing to burgeon and our activities continuing to have an ever more severe impact on the natural world, that we're kind of burning the candle at both ends and living unsustainably, and that the world that we're going to leave again to our kids and grandkids is already severely compromised, and that we're facing potential dire effects from climate change and our lack of regard for the natural systems on which we utterly and completely depend. So I think it's our big job to try to figure out how to make the future work.
Very good points, Alan. Yeah, lots of those key global variables are moving in the wrong direction, despite the raised awareness of ecosystem health, city urbanization, urban sprawl, biodiversity loss, ocean acidification. And there's a heightened awareness right now of those issues, but there's still this disconnect with people being connected even to their own communities, to their own you see people littering, for example, and it's like they don't have any connection to the environment. Why is that, and what can we do about it?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. It's especially frustrating when people in key leadership positions continue to deny that there's even a problem, which is just mystifying to me. But it's, I think part of the issue is that it's just so big and it feels kind of amorphous, and people maybe don't want to grasp their connection to it, and that we're all responsible. Every single person is responsible for trying to play a part in helping ensure a sustainable future. We as Americans are consuming at enormous rates. We have about 5% of the world's population, and yet we consume about 20% of the world's resources. So it's not a problem that's that's halfway around the world. The problem is everywhere in all of us, and we all have to be aware of it and work on it.
Indeed.
I'm sorry to preach, but
no, I want to get your perspectives. Yeah, and I appreciate it. One of the I know you've seen the images, for example, of the pale blue dot from the Saturn's rings and so on. It's one of those 3 or 4 that are out there. Are sometimes I show those not to get people depressed, but kind of what you're saying, that this is it. This is our habitat. As far as we know, it's the only life-sustaining orb out there. And so this is it. If we're following our own nest, so to speak, that has dire consequences. On a positive note, I do think that this Geo Awareness is going to result in a positive future. I mean, when I think of, like Jon Snow, Alan, the whole cholera thing in 1854 in London and so on, that when it dawned on people that, we're polluting our own water and people are dying. And then when they realized that we've got to clean up and have a sanitation system, it must have seemed like an incredible, impossible task. And while I recognize that, there are still lots and lots of people around the world that don't have access to safe drinking water, on the other hand, for many, they are no longer worried about dying the next time they take a drink. So, we have come a long ways in certain areas. So we've at least solved parts of the problem. We just need to go to the finish line here.
No, it's true. There's a tremendous progress has been made. A lot of it, of course, via increased public awareness and commitment to change, but also technology has helped a lot. And I think GIS, Geographic Information Systems, and science can and is playing a big role in that battle toward a healthy future.
Indeed. We're always saying, right, it's not just about the technology, it's about the wiser decisions that can be made based on data-driven decisions, and GIS, being a big part of that. Just to close things off here, I'm wondering what your advice would be to a new professional in the related fields that we've chatted about today.
Well, they're just realize there are lots and lots of really exciting opportunities. I know having two daughters who are just a few years out of college. I know how difficult it can be to make that transition to the workplace, but there are just lots of opportunities in the fields of geographic information and science, and just to look for, to actively seek those opportunities. But as you mentioned, look for companies or organizations that provide real meaningful work. It's one thing to pay the rent, but it's another thing to do work that you feel is valuable and important and meaningful and fun.
I love that, Alan. Yeah, the whole distinction between, having a job versus having a career. You and I both know people that they are stuck. They're, looking forward to, quitting time today at work, and they're stuck in some sort of position. My heart really goes out to them. I've got some students at the University of Denver right now that are sort of mid-career changing. I want to do something in not just necessarily in GIS, although that is their main focus, but they are saying, is it too late for me to transition over into something that really is going to make me feel like I'm contributing more to the planet's sustainable future? And I always tell them, and I'm sure you do too, no, it's never too late. You can do it. And actually, we need those people with a wide variety of backgrounds in these geotechnology fields, because you and I know at Esri and other organizations, we've got chemists, we've got soil scientists, we've got demographers, we've got a whole variety of people. Each of them has strengths to bring to an organization. So also, I liked your point about having fun. We do enjoy what we're doing. Yes, it's a very serious task that we've got before us to build this smarter, more sustainable planet, but you've got to have a sort of reverence for the moment, joy in the moment. I like that statement of yours about enjoying what you're doing. And I think that radiates out with the things that you've been doing, Alan. Again, it's just a thrill to be working with you. Thanks for sharing your story for the listeners here in the Directions Magazine column, GeoInspirations. Really appreciate it.
You bet. My pleasure, Joseph. Thanks so much.
Folks, thanks for joining us on this installment of GeoInspirations from Directions Magazine.